Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us at Beauty in the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and more profits. Now, today's guest is Dr. George Sanders. He's a board-certified plastic surgeon in private practice in a suburb, Encinitas, kind of near LA. And he's been there for more than 39 years. Holy cow. So Dr. Sanders was raised in Texas and then educated and trained at Rice University as well as Harvard Medical School. Now he's received several awards and honors, and he's very active in local and national plastic surgery societies and associations. So Dr. Sanders, thank you so much for joining me on Beauty in the Biz.
My delight. Nice to see you again. I'm looking forward to spending some time with you.
Oh, fantastic. So what everyone likes to hear is, how did you end up in private practice in Southern California? And did you come from Texas? And what was that journey like?
Right. I grew up in Southeast Texas, a place called Port Arthur. Janis Joplin was from Port Arthur.
No kidding.
In fact, her brother was in my Boy Scout troop. And she was in the same graduating class as Jimmy Johnson. Dallas Cowboy fans, Miami Dolphin fans know Jimmy Johnson.
Of course.
Mates, he used to pull her hair. So that was Port Arthur. I graduated. I went to college at Rice University in Houston. And then for medical school, I went to Boston. I met my wife there while I was at Harvard Medical School. Met her, and we moved to California. I was at UCLA for 7 years doing residency, general surgery, plastic surgery. I knew that I wanted to go into private practice. It was not a question of what do I want to do. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So there were a couple of plastic surgeons in the San Fernando Valley area. I liked the Valley. I was at Cedars-Sinai for a portion of my training, and that just wasn't quite me. I'm from Texas, more of a Midwestern type. So I had done a little bit of moonlighting as a resident. I don't tell my chief that, but I did. And I was in the Valley. I enjoyed the Valley. And so when it came time to look for a practice, I said, hey, I'm going to look there. I found two guys, and I've been in the same office in Encino. Yesterday, in fact, marked my 39th anniversary of starting practice. Interestingly, when I started practice, the two guys who were, who I was joining, not actually, it was a cost sharing arrangement, which has worked very, very well for me over the years. But both of them went on vacation for like a couple weeks each. One of them had done a facelift on a nurse, and he left, and when you know it, she had a hematoma. So I ended up doing that, and then I had to drive her over to her house and this and that and the other. So it was, I guess they figured if I could pass that, I was okay to have as an associate. So I've had really wonderful associations over those years. I was with the original two guys for a period of time. One of them retired, and the one who remained with me, Shelley Rosenthal, his nephew was in training, was doing fellowship at Children's Hospital. He began to do some work in the office, and then Shelley tragically died. And so Steve went from replacing the first plastic surgeon as sort of a part-timer to a thing of, hey, Steve, it's either now or never, brother. We're going to do plastic surgery together in private practice. And so he gave up his academic aspirations, joined me, and we have been together now for over 20 years.
Holy cow, that's so interesting.
It's worked out very well. We have a cost-sharing arrangement. We have a surgery center there. We share call, and we share cost, but we are not partners. And I think that's worked very well. The two guys that I joined had just broken out of a three-man partnership. And it really didn't go well. And so this has worked very, very well for me over the years.
Then how do you make decisions? Neither of you is the boss, right? So how would you, if something happens in the office and you have a big expense, how do you handle that?
Sort of like a marriage, it is a lot like a marriage. We talk about it. We come to an agreement about things, and we tend to think alike about so many things. As the years have gone by, I think we're thinking more and more alike. Maybe we're even starting to look like each other. I'm not sure. But yeah. So that works out. And if it's something where he feels strongly about one thing, well, fine. And if I feel strongly about one thing, it's his thing, is fine. We realize that we are very, very fortunate to have really a long relationship together. And whatever we do, we don't want to jeopardize that. So each of us is willing to give a bit just to make the thing work. And I found that worked out very, very well with with my particular associate that I have. He is a great guy to work with, and we've been very, very, very fortunate over these years.
I wonder if that's the way to do it. You never, maybe not make it so legal where you're a partnership and the egos start conflicting with each other. Or is it just because you have the same values and it just happened to, you care about the same things?
Well, we do have a contract, but it's sort of the generalities. It's more a thing of being committed to making it work. I mean, that's the most important thing. You can write all the contracts that you want. Don't have a commitment to making it work, it's not going to work. So we do have a commitment to making it work, and so we just make it work. It doesn't matter what the contract says. If there's a better way to do things, we just do it. We're not big on legalism. We're big on being practical and making things work for us, and it really has worked out very, very well. It's great to have someone who is excellent, who will cover you when you're away. So we really, between the two of us, managed to cover all the days. Sometimes he's out of town and I'm covering. Sometimes I'm out of town, he's covering. Sometimes both of us are out of town. So we have someone else in the area who can help us. So it's worked out nicely.
Very nice. And how do you divvy up staff?
Well, each of us have our own particular cadre of nurses and patient care coordinators who we each have as our individuals. Then we share the two receptionists at the front desk. We share an office manager. We share a bookkeeper. We have two insurance secretaries, and we kind of share those. Then we have the surgery center. In the surgery center, each of us has our own particular, scrub tech and operating circulating nurse. And then we have a director of nursing who is usually one of the circulating nurses who sort of oversees things. And then the recovery room is staffed by pretty much per diem people that are just shared employees.
So when there's a management issue, do you handle it or you just let the office manager handle it?
Well, I meet with the office manager every other week, and I usually see her a couple of times a day. So we stay in close contact. I probably make most of those management decisions, but I'm always quick to include, Steve, my associate, in any important decisions. But yeah, Pam, the big thing she talks to me about, she's been with us now for like 20, 25 years. She started as bookkeeper. She became the office manager. So our employees in our office, we're getting old together. My nurse, my nurse practitioner, she's been with me 38 years.
Oh,
My patient care coordinators, one has been like 13, the other's like 6, 7 years. So we sort of have like a mind meld. We tend to think alike about things. And the office manager, she knows what I kind of like, and she'll discuss important things with me, of course. And of course, contracts and all that. Of course, I do sign those. But she handles the day-to-day management issues. As far as the spa is concerned, we have one of the receptionists who actually is becoming our spa manager, and she works with our overall office manager in the management of the spa. And I dip in and give a little input here and there. So yeah, it's not so much a hierarchical management structure. It's more of a playing field. We talk back and forth. We're all not exactly equals, but we do have everyone is giving input, and I'm not handing down the 10 Commandments from the mountain.
Do you meet regularly?
I meet every other week with the office manager. Yes, I don't meet so much with my associate. We kind of know what each other does, and I'll talk to if I'm talking to Pam, to the office manager about something in our meetings. And if we're making a decision about something, I say, well, be sure you speak to Steve about it, make sure he's okay with it. And then the two of us, Steve and I, text back and forth, email back and forth. We sprint each other in the hallway. We share an operating room, so we'll talk back and forth.
And is it only you two in the OR, or do you rent it out to others?
We only have two. We have considered that in the past, but sure, you make a little bit of extra money, but it really introduces an additional degree of complexity, like who's going to work, for the doctor who's coming in to do stuff, and what if you need some special hours? What if you need some special stuff? It's just for the additional amount of money that we would make, it's not worth it. So it's just the two of us. We have two ORs, and so each of us has our own operating room. If the other person isn't operating on a particular day, occasionally we'll flip back and forth between two rooms, but the OR staff is efficient in turning the rooms over. And because we're in the office is next door to the surgery center, literally it's just a door away. I can go out and do stuff. And so even if we're spending a little time turning things over, I have plenty of things to do outside in the office, and then I just go back in. So it works out just fine just having a single OR.
Did you always have that, or was that an add-on?
That was, we've always had that. When I joined the practice, they had just moved into this suite. We became Medicare. We built the surgery center out and became Medicare certified a number of years ago. So yes, we've always had an operating room that was part of the office. And I tell you, that is such a wonderful thing. You have so much more control over things. If you were to say, can you build an OR now, it would cost us several $1 million to do so. There are a lot of additional regulations that we were grandfathered in with. So it would be an arduous undertaking. So we enjoy what we have. Downside to it is that we're in we rent our office space. So we're kind of stuck, we don't like the office space. Now we're going to stay there because we need the OR.
Right. Right.
It's worked out well for the 39 years. Yeah.
Do you have any trouble getting accredited to a couple of years? California is tough.
It's Medicare, and they come out and it's always, they always find some things that you could do better. But I view it as a learning experience. And these are usually very positive and constructive criticisms. And they've always been very affable. We don't have any egregious things, faults that they need to correct. And I think as long as you demonstrate an attitude of we're here to learn from you, we're not here to make your inspection difficult. We're here to take from you what you have to say and implement it in the way we do things because we want to be better. And people respond to that very positively. So we've never had any problems with certification.
Oh, good attitude. So how much of your business or your revenues are insurance-based versus cosmetic?
Say about 99% is cosmetic. Over the years, it's, when I first started, of course, it was much more of a reconstructive type of practice. I did a fair amount of hand and breast reconstruction. At this point, we're doing pretty much cosmetic. For just a number of reasons, it tends to work out better for us. But so I'd say about 99% and 1%. We certainly will bill insurance for patients and reimburse whatever the insurance company pays, but we're not accepting insurance for cases.
Gotcha. And then how active is the med spa? Because do you find that it's necessary to have one? Do you wish you could just do surgery and skip the med spa part? Oh, what's your feeling on that?
Well, Steve and I have a very nice relationship with the med spa. He is the one who oversees the injectors and the treatments and things of that type, a little bit more hands-on than I do. It's very nice to have a med spa where we send pretty much all of our injectables, all of our non-surgical procedures. They do it up in the med spa. It's nice to be able to call someone up, one of the nurse injectors, and say, hey, I've got a patient here right now. I think they benefit from this or this. Let me send them up to you, see what you think. I find it very helpful, certainly in this day and age of non-surgical procedures, that it dovetails so nicely with what we do in surgery. So I'd say, yes, you definitely have to have a non-surgical component to your practice. And we've opted to do that in form of a Medi-Spa. And they're in the same building as we are. So they handle those sorts of things. That's where most of the lasers are. That's where the injectables, the Botox, things of that type are done. And we refer patients up there. I don't do much of it downstairs. My nurse practitioner does a little bit of Botox, but over the years, she has really transitioned from a lot of injectables, a lot of fillers, to just a little bit. And we send everything else up to the med spa.
And then do they send surgery down to you?
Ideally.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that would be the biggest advantage is because patients will go up and down that ladder all day. We might start with non-surgical, work our way to surgical, but then go right back down to non-surgical because you want to keep your investment alive and well.
I'd say there is the occasional patient that comes to the med spa, but if we depended on that, we wouldn't do very well.
Yeah. Well, I'll just give you a tip that has worked very, very well. In the med spa, in the exam rooms,
Right.
where the patient is sitting waiting for the injector to prepare the Botox or the filler or whatever.
Right.
You have those digital frames going around and you're showing off your great work. You're showing off a tummy tuck and a bleph and whatever. And
Right.
it's just going around you're not talking, no one's talking. It's just pictures going around and around.
Yeah.
And the patient looks over and says, huh, tummy tuck, what do you know about that? That's how you get some more surgery. Yeah.
Very nice. Thanks for the tip.
Sure. So, any staff tips? We usually we end up talking about staff a lot, especially after just things happening. It hasn't been easy. What's your stance on? Well, apparently it's been great for you. I don't know how you've had staff so long. You must be just amazing to work for. Yeah. Any tips?
Well, certainly we hire staff with the focus being on someone who really is there to serve patients.
How do you know that? How can you feel that?
Well, you can tell a lot by talking to people.
Mhm.
You can tell a lot by having your staff talk to people. Okay, and you can even have people come out and work with you a little bit for a period of time and kind of see how things are. Occasionally we don't do so well, and we have to say, okay, well, I'm sorry, that's not working out. Say we have, in general, a fairly high rate of success. In the operating room, I've had a bit more turnover as far as circulators and scrub techs than I would like, but people usually last like 4 or 5 years. It's not as long lived though as the office staff, but still, that's a fairly long period of time. And then people decide they want to do something else, or maybe they want to greener fields, greener pastures somewhere else. So they'll head on over to that. But yeah, you're really not so much looking for people in the back in the surgery center who are there to serve. I'm really talking more about people in the front. We have really been very, very fortunate doing it. We have lost people along the way that just didn't work out, and if it's not working out well, we're not we're not afraid to say, okay, it's just not working out. But we've managed to, at this point, we've got a great group of people. I hope we can ride this one out into the sunset. One of my patient care coordinators just had a baby. She was away for 4 months, so that was a bit of a challenge, particularly for the other patient care coordinator who really did a fantastic job. Give her a shout out. Uh, but we hire people with the attitude of someone who's there to serve, and then we treat people very, very, very well. We're like one of my patient care coordinators for a time was going over to Africa on a church mission for a couple of weeks at a time, and that's a fairly long period of time to be away from the practice. But happy to do it. I'm really interested in them as individuals, as persons, in furthering their growth and caring for them, and they respond well to that. If you're loyal to them, they will be loyal to you. So I find that's very, very, very helpful as far as longevity of staff.
Yeah, so it's kind of like acknowledgement and recognition is usually sorely lacking, and that's what they are looking for. But a lot of others want a lot more time off now, or they want more money or commission or bonuses. Are you feeling that at all?
Well, we do have a commission structure for our
Okay.
patient coordinators. Yeah, I find that has worked really, really, really well.
Hmm.
We've done things a little differently over the last, I'd say the last 5, 6 years. Before I was seeing like 20, 25 new patients a week to produce about 8 new patients in the operating room for surgery. But I realized that pace was something that was going to be difficult to sustain. I really didn't want to be seeing that many people. So we've really done things a little bit differently. The patient care coordinators are extremely well versed in the procedures, and by speaking to patients on the phone, spending maybe 30 minutes with a new patient call, they're able to really give the patient a very good idea of what it is it sounds, and they'll even have the patient have them send pictures. What it is that it's going to take to give them the kind of result that they're looking for, to give them an approximate price range, tell them about recovery, to encourage the patient to start thinking about, well, am I thinking about a date coming up soon? Have I lined up my support personnel, time off from work? Are the finances there? So by the time they come to the office, virtually all of the patients are scheduling surgery. So I've gone from seeing 25 new patients in a week to maybe 8 new patients in a week because they're all scheduling surgery. So that is very, very helpful. That frees me up an additional probably day and a half per week. So I now take Fridays off. I call in occasionally, and occasionally something pops up, but pretty much taking that time off. And it also helps to have a nurse practitioner who has been with me so long, she kind of knows what I think about things. She definitely knows what I think about things. And we text or we, email or pictures, whatever, on the day I'm not there. But that's very, very helpful for me to free up that day off. I know that as the years pass and I'm started winding down maybe a little bit in terms of time, still doing surgery, a lot of surgery, but not wanting to spend quite as much time in the office. This is a nice way to extend my reach so that I don't need to be in the office all the hours that I did earlier in my career.
For sure. I think that comes from maturity too. I've been training coordinators for decades on how to promote services or sell or whatever the word is you want. And I'm always so surprised that we think it's a good idea to tell them everything all at the get-go, like at the face-to-face meeting. And I think, for heaven's sakes, who can make a decision? They've just met all these new people. They just heard a bunch of information they never heard before. I mean, you can't get a yes when somebody's confused or
Right.
scared or logistics are a problem. So I think let's talk about that way sooner. It makes so much sense.
Someone explained it as going out on a date. You almost never get a kiss on that first date. Second date, maybe third date, yeah, probably so. So the initial phone call is the first date, okay? And then they come in for the consult. They meet with that patient care coordinator again. That's the second date. And by the time they finish the consultation with me and meet again, that's the third date. So patients have really had a chance to hear at the initial conversation, at the initial phone call, what it is that it sounds like they're going to need, if the price range for these sorts of things. They come in again, and that is once again reinforced. They go, patient care coordinator goes over all that again, and then I immediately see the patient. That's their office visit. And then after I finish with the consult, they go, patient care coordinator and the patient go back together again for the third date. So much more likely to have a conversion. In fact, most of our patients who come in, I'd say probably 50% of them, have already scheduled a date for surgery and made their deposit before they even come in. That's how good the patient care coordinators are. They're really quite knowledgeable about the procedures that we offer and what my thoughts are about things, and they're able to really size things up with a phone call, maybe some back and forth pictures, that sort of thing, so that the patients have a very good idea before they come in. And when they're ready to schedule surgery, that's when they come in for the consultation.
Right. Right. Good job. So, are you, I mean, you've been around for 39 years. You
Right?
must have an exit strategy or thoughts about exiting. How are you going to do it?
Well, my goal is 50 years. I'd like to practice 50 years. Part of it is my son does the IT for the office, and it's fun to kind of work with him on those things. In terms of an exit strategy, I've thought about things. I thought about, do I want to sell the practice? Well, the problem is the kind of practice I have really doesn't have much value without me being there. So, and whenever you sell a practice, someone has to come into it and spend time with you. And we're a little crunched for space. So I've just said, hey, I'm just going to practice until I can't practice anymore. And then I'll just stop practicing. So that's my exit strategy. I've got the building lease lined up so that after a certain point, I can walk away from it tomorrow, and
Oh,
they don't care. So I've got a couple more years before I'm at that point. As far as letting my associate know, I'll let him know a few months in advance, and then we can wind things down. But other than that, I really don't have anything elaborate planned.
but doesn't he so wouldn't he want to stay in the practice and keep a long-term lease?
I'm not sure. He's not a spring chicken. A
Oh, okay. I was thinking he was younger. No?
little bit, yeah, maybe
Okay.
70. But if I end up practicing 50 years, he may very well hang it up after 43 himself.
I hope you're taking your vitamins. Yeah, it's a
I
long
take
time.
I take a couple. They say vitamins really don't make a difference.
You know what? I hear that all the time, but I live in California and I've been taking vitamins since I got here at 23
Yeah.
because I'm afraid that it's going to turn out they are good for you.
I took a little
So
basis. I take
the
them
way
all
I
the
look
time.
at it is if they're not hurting me and maybe they are helping me, and psychosomatically or whatever that's called, I think they are helping, so I'm going with it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a yeah, it's almost a part-time job because I'm all about reading. Oh, okay, I should take that too. Oh, okay. And then it becomes this thing in the morning where it's like, I'm up to, I don't know, 12 or something. And then four of them I have to take twice a day. And it's a whole thing, but I don't know.
Vitamins, sort of up in the air about things. I mean, I
Yeah,
take turmeric and some things like that. I think turmeric is it, and then a multivitamin. But certainly something that's a proven benefit is exercise, and
always.
I do that every day pretty much. Yeah,
What
without.
what do you like?
Well, it's changed over the years. At this point, I am doing primarily my elliptical trainer. I just do that at home in the mornings, and then some strength training with weights and machines. I have those at home.
Mm,
I do all of that, and I get that done in about 50 minutes. So
nice.
by the time I hit the office, that's all behind me, and I try to make a habit of doing that each and every day. Also, trying to sleep 7 hours a night. That's doesn't always happen, but sleep and exercise, I think, and in terms of a diet, I don't miss meals. I have a little snack in the morning, a little snack in the afternoon, and 3 meals, and so I find with that my body responds well to it. I've been exercising since I was in high school. It's part of my life. It's if I don't do it, I'm like, oh, I'm missing a little something. So just do it.
I'm so grateful I have that same gene. I don't know where it came from. My family was not into it at all. I somehow just got that bug. And for me, it's like brushing my teeth. I don't know why I wouldn't do it. I would be way off course. I just love it. I'm so glad I always afraid it was going to go away. And I love it. I like that a lot.
You're just as energetic and vibrant now as you were the first time that I met you. It's probably 30 years ago. So whatever you're doing is working well for you. Keep it up.
Thank you. I do have some energy, and I don't know where that comes from, but I appreciate it, and I hope to have it. I don't know about 50 years because I worry about my vanity a lot. So if my face will if my face will hold up and my body will hold up because I've had really good luck with that. Just doing the weights. You have to. By the way, has this helped? Has exercise helped a lot with your posture? Being a surgeon, so many of you have issues later on. Does that help a lot?
Well, it definitely does. I mean, they say Vince Lombardi said, fatigue makes cowards of us all. And what he meant by that was when you're tired, you from my perspective, doing a case, you've been at it for a number of hours and you're at the end and something doesn't look quite right. You want to have the energy to say, that's not right, and go back and redo that. If you don't, if you're just running on empty, the tendency is to say, good enough is good enough. So yeah, no, I'm big on exercise, and also you're right. When I do cases like breast cases, I don't walk around to the other side of the table. I stay on one side of the table, have them rotate the table toward me. But that
Oh,
obviously is important in terms. You need to have a strong back. I try to be ergonomic in terms of things, but you're right. Exercise, strength training definitely equips you to deal with things. The other thing I like to do is, like cross training. Do cross training because you don't want to be doing the same thing all the time because you tend to wear out parts of your body. Same way with surgeries. I like to do a variety of surgeries. If I was doing the same thing every day, that places a lot of stress on particular joints, particular muscle groups, that sort of thing. I know that's like in January, that's always facelift month. We do like 30 facelifts in a month.
yeah.
There's certain things that you're doing with your arms and your neck and that. And after a month of that, it's like, give me a breast case. And I'm wearing out the body here.
Yeah.
So a mixture of cases also helps.
Nice. So let's change gears and let's talk about marketing. I love talking about marketing.
Okay.
How competitive is it in your area?
Los Angeles is extremely competitive. It's like most of the larger cities. There are lots of plastic surgeons, and there certainly is demand for surgery, but it's definitely a competitive market. Yes.
How do you differentiate yourself? And I noticed you have the Max Lift. What's that?
Right. A number of years ago, there was a Belgian plastic surgeon who introduced this. It's basically a limited neck lift, and if you're moving up the cheek area, it becomes an extended max lift, which is more of a limited facelift, you're not doing as much in the neck area for those procedures. But you don't need drains typically. You don't go overnight to recovery center. The recovery is a little less involved. And a lot of patients don't like the idea of a full facelift, or their neck may be, okay, maybe they have a little bit of skin laxity, but not a lot of muscle bands, things of that type. You don't have to open the neck. You can approach it from the side. And it's a technique that involves some tightening of the platysmal muscle from the lateral aspect, tightening of the cheek, and you really get, for the right person, you can get a very nice result. And a lot of patients like the concept of something that's not a full facelift. There's just something about that. I don't want to have a full facelift. I want to have a little less than that. My neck doesn't bother me that much. So I do a lot of sort of component part surgery. If someone comes in and says, my jawline is bothering me, I'm looking for a surgical solution, I can deal just with that. I don't need to go with a full facelift. Or if someone's saying, well, my neck is bothering me, if that's it, we don't need to do a full facelift for that. We can just address it with a neck lift. Or someone saying, well, it's more of the cheek area, it's the same. And again, this isn't a revelation to your plastic surgery audience, but I make max lift fits into that as a neck lift that doesn't involve opening the neck in the front, using a lateral approach. And for the right person, you can get a very nice outcome.
It can be challenging though, because women especially, I think it's the vanity thing. They just can't admit that they need a facelift. They can't even say they need a facelift. They can say, I just need a little something, something,
Yeah.
And then they want to get by with the mini. They'll say, I just need a mini. I just need a little something. And then they need more. So how do you balance that out? Like trying to give them what they want, but then give them what they really need. And I'm sure there's a big cost difference in that as well. How do you handle that?
Well, my thought is the patient is almost always right. So I listen to what the patient wants. And if the patient, people who come in and you're thinking to yourself, my goodness, they would benefit from this, that, or the other. And I may gently mention that at their consultation. But if they're not inclined to do that, I'm not inclined to push it. They have a vision, and I'm trying to lock into that vision and accomplish that vision. Now, obviously, if someone is saying, I'd like to have my nose made smaller and they have a very recessive chin, I will mention that a chin enhancement would make the nose appear small. That might be something to consider. But I don't lean very hard on that. I'm not someone who says you need this, and I don't care what you think you need. This is what you need to look your best, and that's what I'm telling you to do. I don't believe in that. I listen to patients and I try to, as long as what I'm proposing is fulfilling their vision of what they want, I'm good with it. I don't have a standard that I have to live up to. I'm looking to live up to the standard that they want to present to me.
Do they ever come back though and say, this isn't enough, I needed more than that?
They do, but
Yeah.
I'm always careful to document that, and we
Yeah.
discuss it beforehand. They understand that these are more limited procedures,
Yeah.
but it generally works out well. And if someone decides they want to do more, we can always at a reduced price give them more in a second operation.
Mm-hmm. There's something else you do that's super, I tell people this forever. Maybe you heard it from me and that's why you're doing it. You have an incredible patient video library where you're explaining things. I don't understand why all doctors don't have this. And I would have it on an iPad and make sure these patients see it ahead of time before the consult, because you could even have a video on when do you need a mini versus a full facelift,
Right.
Like, I just think the more educated a patient is, the more likely they are to convert. Do you find that to be the case, and have those videos been helpful for you?
Well, they're certainly available to patients, and my patient care coordinator certainly mentioned that at the time of their initial phone call with them. How many of them actually go and look at those, I'm not sure. But it's interesting when I ask patients, I'm always surprised how many people have spent a fair amount of time looking around the website. There's a lot of videos there, and I enjoy doing those videos. They're easy to do. They don't take long. The way we are doing things now is once a month, I'll just knock out 6 videos in a row. Uh, it's not a big deal. A lot of those are going into the Instagram feed, that sort of
Mhm.
thing. But they also find their way into the library of what we have on the website. So they sort of serve a dual function. And yeah, I do think it's helpful for patients to look at those. And we do encourage that when the patient care coordinator has their initial phone call with them.
So you really embrace video, and a lot of, good for you. Like, was your son involved in that, or did you always want to be an actor, or like some surgeons absolutely will not do videos. period. And I think, well, then how are you going to market? Because people want to see and hear you. So
I first started doing videos. My son-in-law is a producer. So he actually did some with the green screen and all that. It was elaborate production. Those really look great. But nowadays we just do something with an iPhone with a little clip-on mic for my tie, and those really work out extremely well with a little editing. I should limit them to about a minute. It's amazing how much information you can put across in a minute if you're organized.
right.
So most people aren't interested in listening to you for more than a minute. I know I'm not interested in listening to myself for more than a minute. So yeah, we just do lots of videos on topics that just like this coming week, I'm doing something on the Ozempic face, and then the next month on the ballet body, or some things like that that patients find interesting. But then in terms of procedure specific, yes, we do those as well. And I think, as you point out, very helpful to people, helping them to understand before they make a decision.
And what about patient trends or patient demographics? Because when you started out, I mean, I know when I started out 24 years ago, it was definitely, I was in San Francisco, it was definitely just celebrities or the social crowd, the socialites kind of thing. And it was usually just women. And then it was growing and growing, and then it really grew. And then it opened up all sorts of different ages, genders, ethnicities. It really grew. Do you find that your patient demographics has changed throughout the decades? Like, or do they get older with you, or what's
Yeah,
your
good
spread
question.
nowadays?
Because I'm not in West Los Angeles, that we have are people who are just like regular people. Some of them are extremely wealthy, some of them are not. And we have all sorts of ethnicities, all sorts of colors, that sort of thing. And really, my demographic is about the same now as it was then. In fact, we have
Oh,
a
no
lot of
kidding.
patients who come back, and then they come back to have procedures done 30, 35 years later. They may bring their daughter in for a rhinoplasty, that sort of thing. I've even had one family where I had grandmother, mother, and daughter who've all been part of the surgical experience.
Wow, that would be a great social post, get them on video.
I think we did.
Good job. Do you find they're asking for much different things nowadays, or do you find that they negotiate with you a lot more because they're so much more informed? How do you feel about that?
Patients are certainly informed, and I think they, in general, they're a bit more assertive about things, what they want, and if they don't get what they want, they really want to question you about it. And so I do spend a lot more time with patients before the procedure, at the pre-op visit, trying to inform them, trying to talk about not just risk, alternatives, benefits, but really getting into the details. Like if you have two rock hard breasts, and if you do a capsulectomy and you put in implants, even though you may be the same size, you're not going to look the same. And you're going to tend to droop, and you're not going to be full up at the top. And sort of reinforcing that, you're going to hang to the side. You may want to consider an uplift. You may want to consider mesh, because the breasts tend to settle differently in many cases. So there's a lot more that goes into the informed consent process now than there was, say, 30 years ago, for sure. But it's still fun. I enjoy it. And it's always fun to try to sort out what the patient is after and what they may be thinking, but you're not going to be able to fulfill. So you're trying to give them a realistic idea of things. That's a lot of what I do now, is really trying to get inside their head to try to really give them a realistic idea of what they can expect, so we don't have disappointment afterwards.
But then how do you market? Because generally speaking, let's say the younger rhino patient likes your Instagram, your aging face patient prefers your website to scour it, thoroughly. Do
Right.
you find that you need to be everywhere for everybody, or what's your marketing strategy?
We do many different things, and we're active on Instagram, and Instagram feeds into Facebook. I think just in terms of marketing, though, a lot of things like writing a thank you note when someone refers a patient to you, calling the patient the night of surgery, calling them that weekend, calling them 6 weeks later to see how they're doing. These things you don't think of typically as marketing, but they are extremely powerful tools to encourage people to return. And it's always much better to have someone coming back to you than to try to have it go out and find a new person. So we really try to focus on marketing to our existing patient base, Sometimes we'll do events and invite people to the events. That's always a fun thing that I enjoy doing. And also just having been in the business for a while, you tend to get a lot of repeat business. One thing is my nurse practitioner spends a fair amount of time talking to patients uh, uh, after surgery, even before surgery. And she's great in terms of someone coming back to see her several years after surgery to ask about a particular issue. And she may say, well, have you thought about this? Or the patient may mention something to her. And so she makes certain to bring them right on into the patient care coordinator and let them speak to them. So all of these are extremely powerful marketing tools.
I couldn't agree more. I've given up saying send thank you notes because people look at me in horror. Like, what? So,
There's something special about a piece of paper with your name written on it.
that's why it's so impactful. That's why I don't see why people don't do it. It'll differentiate you big time, I
What
think.
happens is, you're in middle patient hours, and you've got a bunch of patients and all sorts of things. But I just make it a discipline to do. It takes maybe 60 seconds, but
Mm.
but it really yields big benefits. And also, you're just being nice. You're treating people the way you would like to be treated. You'd like to be thanked if you do something special for someone.
Right. I'll bet you get a lot more reviews also because of that. Do you have any secrets for getting patients to approve their photos or give you a good review? Any tips on that?
Well, we don't ask everyone for a review. We only ask happy patients for reviews. So that's
For
part of
sure.
it. Is you have to be sure about that. When patients come back at their 3-month visit, that's when we take before and after the after photographs. And if they have a nice result, we'll ask about, would you allow us to use those? And if they seem very upbeat about things, we'll ask them to write a review for us. I know some people like to, they're asking patients the day after surgery to post reviews and this, that, and the other. Patients really see through that. They see that you're using them. Uh,
Mm.
I don't like to do that. I don't like to wear out my welcome. We'll ask them once to do that. And I think we also have what used to be Real Patient Ratings. I think it's Visium now that does send things out. I think they ask for a little review in that. So I guess we are doing that as well. But other than that, just those 2 times, that's about it in terms of asking patients for reviews.
Gotcha. So we're getting close to the end. Give me your biggest challenge running a solo practice. What has it been, and any solutions for others to learn from?
I think the biggest challenge is to really do outstanding work so that patients never have anything to complain about. And that's something that I really focus on. And it's not all that easy, because with all the things pulling you this way and that, I really try to set aside adequate time for the procedure. I don't like to crimp the time that's needed, and I really try to focus on what I'm doing. If I can deliver an excellent result, and if I can then treat patients the way they'd like to be treated with all of the support staff, bringing that in, things really tend to work out extremely well. And I work 4 days a week. I go home. I do things with family, other things I enjoy doing, and I lead a balanced life. That to me
Mm.
has always been what it's all about. I'm not interested in being the richest plastic surgeon or the one that does the most cases. I'd like to do a good volume of cases, but I'd like to have happy patients that refer their family and friends that come back themselves for more surgeries. And if I can do that, uh, I'm going to be successful. I am successful by my own definition.
For sure. Do you have any grandkids yet?
I do. I have 2. Saturday
Oh,
afternoons, the 4-year-old and I are running around doing stuff together, and the 11-year, I guess he's going to be 13. Yeah. We like family trips. So we go on even though my son is 40, we go on a family vacation with him at mid-year. We just went to Yosemite and Sequoia. And then we're going to be doing Whistler. My daughter as well. She comes on some of these trips with us. So, daughter and her husband. So yeah, I really enjoy doing things as a family. I think it makes for a balanced life, which to me is what it's all about.
good for you. I have not figured out that balance thing. And I mean, I think it would be fantastic to work 4 days a week because I love working, but I don't know when to stop. And I think having 3 days in a row off, I just think that's so good for your mental health. So congratulations.
Hey, come
Yeah.
work with us. We'd love to have you.
And the last question, tell us something we don't know about you.
Well, probably a lot of things you probably don't want to know about me.
No, we want to know.
I've been married 46 years to my wife,
46.
and
Do you
that is,
still like each other?
we do. We do. We're best of friends. And, again, we've had our challenges. Of course, we all do. Each and every day, there are challenges. But I find that if you have a stable family life, that goes a long way to giving you a stable uh, surgical practice. It makes you a happier person. When you go in the morning, you're more positive about things. The staff appreciates that. So you have staff that sticks around longer, that does a better job. You have patients who are going to enjoy better results. They like you because you're chipper and upbeat and all of that. So it all works together, but it all starts at home. That's really the nuclear family. That's where it all starts. So I have a great marriage, a great family life, and I think everything else kind of flows from that.
Well, it's almost a miracle. I hope your kids appreciate that upbringing because that's really good role modeling. It's getting unusual now. It's getting rare for your kind of situation. So congratulations on that.
Very
Yeah.
fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody wanted to talk with you or reach out to you, I know your website is called drsanders.com, and that's drsanders.com. Any other way for them to reach you?
Well, you can email me. I'm always happy to receive an email. Plastic, as in what we do, plastic, GEO, first three letters of my first name, plasticgeo@gmail.com.
Nice. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I really appreciate your time, Dr. Sanders.
Good. Thank you, Catherine.
Absolutely. And everybody, if you would, please share this with your colleagues and your staff. And I'd love a good review if you wouldn't mind, because we're always trying to grow the audience. And then if you've got any feedback or questions for me, you can leave them on my website at catherinemaley.com, or you can certainly DM me on Instagram at catherinemaley.mba. Thanks so much, and we will talk again soon. The fastest way to success is to model other successful surgeons who have what you want, but you can only see their results, not the path they took to get there. So you continue to jump from one thing to another, hoping to find something that will work for you too. But it rarely does. So try this shortcut instead. It's guaranteed to move you forward. I compiled my intellectual property to grow cosmetic revenues, everything I've gleaned over the years, into one playbook of the most successful practices and what they do to win. Go to cosmeticpracticevault.com and let's grow your cosmetic revenues.